Hey everyone, welcome back to Kubrick Corner with me, Sean Wilson. So, if you like World War II movies and you like zombies, then good news because there is a new movie out that combines precisely those two things. It's called Overlord and it's produced by Star Trek and Star Wars, the Force Awakens filmmaker J.J. Abrams, although it's directed by Julius Avery. And if you've seen the trailer, it's pretty much what you see is what you get. So, you get as sort of a Wolfenstein esque setup in which a group of American paratroopers sort of drop into Nazi-occupied France at the height of World War II. While there, they take up in a local village where the villagers are quite clearly terrified, not just of the Nazi scourge, but also of something else. One of the soldiers, played by Giovanna Depo from Fences, he played Denzel Washington's son in Fences rather brilliantly, then discovers a secret Nazi bunker beneath a local church. And wouldn't you know it, the Third Reich are basically planning to develop a 1,000-year army that will basically sweep everything before it in its path. And wouldn't you know it, the American squaddies basically have to stop this from happening. Obs. So, quite honestly, I mean that description will either make you run for the hills or you'll kind of go with it. And it should be said, this isn't an original idea. I mean, the Nazi zombie movies have actually been going for some time now. You think of something like Iron Sky or Dead Snow. The whole idea of undead Nazis or Nazis experimenting with the undead has been going on for quite a while, and unfortunately this new movie doesn't exactly do an awful lot new with that premise. All it does is it takes that basic sort of fairly trashy B-movie conceit and it basically adds more budget and more splatter. I mean, the interesting thing that it doesn't do, it doesn't necessarily add big name actors to it, which I actually think is to its credit, because I think a big movie star would be too distracting in this. What it does is it takes several rising stars and gives them a platform. So I've mentioned Joe Depo, who's really good in Fences and he's really good here. You've got Wyatt Russell, who Kurt Russell's son, probably famous for from the likes of Black Mirror, who is the sensible leader of the unit, who's like gruff and square jawed and is slow to respond to what's going on. But, he's the noble guy. The real scene stealer, I have to say, is the Pilou Asbæk, who I imagine most people will know as Euron Greyjoy from Game of Thrones, who really devours the scenery as this sort of fiendish Nazi high commander who eventually becomes the monstrous nemesis to the heroes in the movie. He basically plays it like a low meets Night of the Living Dead, and he's really, really good fun. He gives it that kind of slightly campy, like incredibly fiendish. It's the stereotype of how evil can a Nazi officer be, and he's really, really good fun. So, but the problem with the movie is that there are no surprises in it, and it doesn't really do an awful lot with its premise. The whole idea, I mean, you either take offence at the premise or you kind of see it for like the B movie trash that it is, and it is a B movie. I mean, I think you've got to kind of accept it on that level. You can't take it seriously. But the whole idea is that the movie kind of runs out of steam with its central idea, and it doesn't really develop this sort of slightly cheeky conceit of the Third Reich experimenting with all these sort of monster mutant characters. I mean, it literally does just devolve into, let's run around and blow a load of shit up and set a load of shit on fire with flamethrowers. So really, the whole idea goes up in flames literally just as soon as it starts. So it doesn't really know what to do with its central premise, other than to just basically splatter a load of gore all over the place. That said, as an enjoyably gory experience, and it is an 18, and you have to work quite hard to get an 18 certificate in the UK nowadays. There's been a plethora of them lately. I mean, you've got Suspiria, Halloween, this. I mean, it's quite nice that there has been almost an upsurge in 18 rated films, and this does earn that. I mean, it's not a watered down 15 rated movie. It is nasty when it wants to be, and I think good. Good. I like horror films that are nasty, as long as they don't get sort of exploitative or sleazy or anything like that. But it's kind of what you see is what you get. If you want to see a group of American GIs kicking butt and basically tackling sort of Nazi undead scourge, that is literally it. There is no more depth to it than that whatsoever. If you're willing to meet it on its own on those terms as I did, you'll have a passably enjoyable experience in the cinema. I mean, J.J. Abrams' name is plastered all over the poster. It doesn't have any kind of stylistic similarities to any J.J. Abrams project whatsoever. It doesn't really have a lot of character in total anyway, really. But yeah, just as you know, I mean, if you saw films like Dead Snow or Iron Sky, and you kind of thought, right, what would those films actually be like if they actually had a bit of Hollywood glossiness injected into them? Then fine. I mean, I imagine the audience for that kind of thing is probably pretty limited anyway, in spite of the fact that J.J. Abrams' name is on this. So I imagine the audience is going to be pretty niche anyway. And again, I wouldn't be surprised if, particularly at this time of the year in the UK, when we're reflecting on the spectre of World War One, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people take offence at that, because this has probably been released in a rather unsavoury release window. And I absolutely understand if people find the idea of this, the idea of taking the horrifying real world events and imposing some kind of sort of ridiculous, like monstrous fantasy on them, absolutely appalling. I completely understand that, but there is a tradition of films like this. I mean, obviously there's a tradition of tongue-in-cheek World War II films. I mean, you think of something like Where Eagles Dare, like back in the 1960s, which was ridiculous, you know, in which Richard Burton and Clint Eastwood single-handedly took on the Nazis and won. You know, there is a tradition of World War II movies that are silly and tongue-in-cheek, but don't necessarily undermine the gravitas of what was there. I think, except Overlord on its own terms, as a piece of gory B-movie trash, and you'll have a great time with it, or a reasonable time with it, let's say. If you take against it, as soon as it starts getting monstrous and zombified, you'll struggle with it. So let me know what you think, and I'll see you soon. Bye.